So, a little unique situation. We had posted, let me do it this way. We had posted our agenda that we had two different conversations to be had while we were in executive. Those conversations were both, one was personnel and two was contract negotiations. As most of you know that are here and anybody watching online, live or later, typically matters of personnel are always discussed in executive session. There's a procedure that has to be followed by the government. We are advised by our manager and our attorney how to do that. Anytime personnel is happening in executive session, those employees have a right to know they're being discussed. And two, they have the option to whether or not that conversation happens in executive session or it happens during the public meeting. So this is new territory for me and new territory, I think, for everybody up here. But we're basically taking a discussion that was going to be done in executive session, which was personnel, and those employees have asked us to have that conversation in public. It's a little odd because we're going to have this conversation with members of the public here and with a camera going and with people watching on TV, but you have to understand this is a conversation in and between us and our administration, our professionals. So bear with us, because before we go into the next portion of the agenda, which is discussions, we still have a matter of personnel to deal with, and it will be discussed here in public. So without further ado, I'm going to now hand it over to the manager. Again, this is uncharted territory for us all, so just bear with us. I'm going to hand it over to the town manager.
Sure. So, members of the council, Mark and I were asked to review the developer's escrow account, which is kept down in the finance department and processed by the finance department. Upon the initial review of the escrow account, we saw that there was a conflict of 3 employees receiving compensation based on being reimbursed for attending meetings, which there is no there's no public authorization via ordinance or resolution to reimburse. So we went back, and again, the review is not completed yet, but we started going back. I think we're back maybe 2 years at this point, doing totals as far as how many checks were issued out of the escrow account that may have been and could continue to be in conflict with a ordinance and a resolution. There is a resolution that this governing body passed on August of 2019. That resolution specifically identifies whether it's the construction official, zoning officer, and acting in the capacity of planning director, a stipend that this governing body passed and issued a stipend. I'm just going to round off numbers, say $670 a month, $17,000 a year. So that is by resolution that those monies are to be paid to the construction official. Besides that, there have been checks issued for attending meetings. So that resolution of August of 2000.
Can I just jump in for 1 second? This is just so members of the council know, this is a conversation. You had mentioned reimbursement. I've seen probably what you've seen. I'm not sure what's being reimbursed. I thought it was being billed for services rendered.
Invoices submitted for meetings attended. If that's, I use the word reimbursed.
Definitely not reimbursement.
Okay.
Reimbursement, you lay money out, you get paid back.
Okay, so I stand to be corrected. So invoices were submitted to the finance department, which those invoices were paid out of the escrow account, which there is no tool, there's no resolution, there's no ordinance to pay a secretary to attend a work meeting or the construction official to attend special meetings or work meetings.
Just a quick question. Are these regular meetings or special?
So the resolution, of August of 2019 specifically identifies all meetings, okay?
Right.
So the compensation, the additional compensation to the construction official is based on the resolution to attend all meetings. But the
So to sum up, the resolution says specifically special, let's just say special planning board meetings, subcommittee meetings. The resolution says you're being compensated 17,000 plus for those meetings.
Correct.
Yet you're telling me invoices have been typed up and money has been withdrawn for the same exact meetings.
Invoices have been submitted to the finance department.
Checks
and Checks have
issued
been issued out of the
For the
escrow
same
account, the
exact
developer's
meeting.
escrow account.
For the
That's
same
correct.
exact meeting that we already know is being paid through an extra stipend.
That's it.
Sounds serious to me.
Again,
How serious do you think it is?
I don't know, because Mark and I are still reviewing the whole, again, part of our later conversation is to correct some of the procedures that aren't being followed.
Agreed.
And I think when we get to that portion of the meeting and realize that via past practice or whatever the result may be, we need to, and when I say we have to include the planning board and the zoning board, we need to make some corrections, obviously.
So based on past practice, we've been doing this for a while.
I don't know how far back, but we're back probably, I know for sure, 2 years, maybe 3, 4, 5. That's what we're going to find.
Yeah.
That's what the review is going to show us.
No, I kind of remember that myself over time, that's what we kind of did, but
So the practice that I'd like to see is that we pay somebody for a service and they don't go and take additional money for the same service. I mean, that's, I think, the practice that I'd like to see. I mean, I don't necessarily care much about past practice if it was wrong.
no, but we approve, you can't go back and say, hey, we did this, we approved this, and it was okay. The auditors saw it, they were okay with it, our CFO was okay with it.
Well, I don't think we approved invoices
Well,
typed up.
our CFO did. Theoretically, that was the person in charge, and our auditors did look at that. So
Got it.
if we need to clarify from this point on, that's a whole nother trip, that, you know.
That's a question.
That's a question to
Well,
me.
That's a question. Does the money come out of?
Comes out escrow.
So is the escrow signed off by the CFO or is it signed off by who?
Anthony's name is on the check, CFO's name's checked on the
Yeah,
check.
so just so that we clearly paint the correct picture of what took place, because certainly I don't want anyone to point a finger at Kim. The procedure that's in place, or was in place up until this initial review, was that professionals, secretaries, construction officials would take an invoice and submit it to the finance department, who matched it up to the meeting or to the development, and those checks were issued with a stamp. Now, this practice has been going on before we had Judith. Joe was in charge of the escrow account, so then and again, the review is not totally complete because I haven't even spoken to Judith, but I'm going to tell you, Joe was doing it, right? Joe was, we didn't have a CFO, we didn't have a full-time CFO. So at one point, Joe was in charge, then
Yeah, but you don't know how long this goes back.
I do not.
So being that Joe was here or not here, wouldn't matter if it only started, say, in the last 2 years or so, or year or so.
If the review says that it only started in the last 2 years, absolutely.
As you know, I filed an open request. But review is pretty easy. I mean, you just look. I had sent you an email 3 weeks ago. What is the review process? I mean, it's very easy for me. I filed an open request and I could see. So what more time, or what's the next step?
I don't want to put a time limit on it, but I think when we get to the next topic, which we're keeping the topic separate, and I have no problem keeping the topic second, but I think when we get to the next topic, it's going to be quite clear that bills are being paid without proper authorization. And again.
Or
Go ahead.
without proper authorization implies like the bills are okay to be paid, there's just no authorization.
No, I didn't say
I think
that.
we're talking about something a little different, that
I didn't say
they're
that.
inappropriately being invoiced and inappropriately being paid. It's a big difference.
I don't think that's wrong.
Yeah, Mayor, if I may, I had a question in regards to that. It kind of aligns with what he's saying. I mean, I'm a small business owner, and I think of it as if I'm paying someone their salary, and they're also billing, that's what I'm understanding, right? They're billing for the same services that they've already rendered. Now, is there anywhere in the ordinance where it mentions a limit of meetings where people may have been under the impression that they had a limit, and after that, they can bill after that?
No. So and I refer to it as the ordinance that this council passed in August of 2019, specifically identifies all the meetings, and it says that.
Solution.
It's a
I'm sorry,
resolution.
I
it's not-
apologize. That is the
A
resolution.
resolution, okay.
There is an ordinance that is prior to that,
Supersedes it?
that refers to things that are not being done. That ordinance goes back to, I could give you the date, I have a copy of it somewhere, but it's a very old ordinance. Give me a second, I could tell you. That ordinance goes back to,
I mean, I don't think I need the time.
I believe 1978, and again, that's part of the review is going to tell us. And again, what the ordinance of, and let's just round it off, what that ordinance says is not being done, and I think that's
That's the procedures for
the
later.
next part we're going to
Is the
address.
policies
So
and
there's,
procedures.
it's really, for anybody that's paying attention, listening or watching here, it's fairly, in my opinion, it's fairly black and white. We have a resolution authorizing a stipend. That stipend is for X, Y, and Z services, including X, Y, and Z meetings, including specifically saying after-hour meetings. That stipend is $17,000 and change. That employee is receiving that stipend, but that employee is still creating invoices, walking them down to the finance department, and taking money for the same meetings he's already being paid the stipend for. In a nutshell, correct me if I misspoke.
No, the initial review clearly shows that, yes.
Okay. That's, I mean, that's pretty troubling. I don't know why more people aren't outraged at that, but it's pretty troubling.
It just sounds like, to me, that there's been some miscommunication here, and we
Yeah,
need to-
miscommunication.
And Michael, let me finish, please.
Yeah.
We need to clarify it and make sure that it doesn't happen again. I mean, the whole point for me is,
Next
if
time on the
if
agenda.
we've identified a problem, then we need to find that problem and find a way to move forward.
Typing up an invoice for something you already did, walking it downstairs,
I-
getting a check is not a miscommunication.
But if we've been doing this for years,
I haven't
and this
been
is the
doing
way
it.
it's been doing
I
it,
haven't been
you know, and we've been doing it for at least 2 years, so,
We?
yeah, we're part of this whole puzzle.
Oh, I am not part of this
You know,
puzzle.
you're not part of anything that takes responsibility.
No,
Let's
because
be serious.
I'm actually
You just
the-
take credit, no responsibility.
Right,
This is
and
bull.
speaking of taking credit, thank you for teeing that up.
And oh, by the way, let's take credit for the fourth phase of the stadium project, which is not the first phase of the stadium project.
We're
No,
not-
I'd like, to- this is what
Can we
pisses me
stick
off.
to this
Yeah.
topic?
Yeah, let's
So-
stick to it.
Thanks.
Talking about responsibility, Councilman, I will take responsibility for first looking into this matter. I will take responsibility for providing the information to the manager, and I will take responsibility for us uncovering what we've uncovered. You want to call it past practice for some strange reason. You want to say
I'm
we've
not-
always done it that way.
That's not a
you
strange
did say
reason.
that. You
We've
did say
been
that.
doing this.
Oh,
You
so
know,
it's okay.
It's something
you on the
that we
record
need
that
to
it's okay then?
clarify and
We've
say
been
it's
doing it?
wrong. Okay, we're going to say now it's wrong, so let's figure it out.
Getting
and
paid
move forward.
getting paid twice is wrong? It's just wrong?
You know,
No, can't say it. Get on the record.
Mike, on the record is, if we've made a mistake as a
Wait.
township, then we need to correct it. You know, if you want to go after somebody in particular,
let
that's
me
your
ask you a
prerogative.
question. Let
If
me
you
ask
want
you
to
a
go
question.
after somebody in particular, that's your prerogative, and you've been doing this for freaking 3 years.
Got it.
So stop
So
it.
many, many years ago, when our recreation director, many years ago, was taking money out of a fund, was that a mistake? Was that a miscommunication?
Well, by the way, he created that fund, and he created an account, and that's how he did it.
Right, but was that a
It's
miscommunication?
not the same thing. It's
Oh, it's not.
definitely not the same thing.
All right,
This
so-
is stuff that we've basically had supervision over through our
So-
CFO.
Being that Anthony kind of brought up the reason why rice notices were being issued, and clearly we have at least one council member that just wants to put this under the rug.
Clearly,
and call
that's
it-
wrong, Mike.
Okay.
Clearly, what I want to do is get to a point where we stop harassing the business people and just move forward.
Are we
That's the issue.
should we
If
hold-
we need to clarify this, Mike, yes, I agree with that.
Let
Do
me
we
ask you
need
a
to come
question.
forward? But I think that you've shown over the course of time, in fact, we just went through an investigation that cost us $40,000 on, going after the same person. Stop. Please stop this.
So that was actually a private matter that was never discussed publicly.
Wow, good.
But being that Councilman Revelle brought it up, it did cost $40,000 to actually say I did nothing wrong.
If
So-
they didn't say that, they said we need to follow best practices, and I don't perceive this as best practices.
Okay, good. So what I'm going to do now.
And you and I are going to disagree on that
We
one.
are. So would getting to the bottom of it include discipline, you think, Councilman, or no,
I
just?
don't, I really can't tell, Mike, because that seems to be all you're interested in.
Got it.
Let's discipline and hurt people.
So what I'm going to do now, since I think we're getting a little bit of different opinions here.
Yeah, we're going to get different opinions.
Because Councilman Revelle, you have not seen any of the data, to the best of my ability. You haven't seen the invoices. You
Mike,
haven't
you
reviewed
opened
anything.
all this stuff, you did all this stuff.
did.
Nobody knew about it till now.
So therefore, I'm going to just give a nice summary. I think the manager did an okay job. I think some of us
Does a
up here.
good job myself.
I think some of us here are just trying to say, well, let's just fix this administratively, but I'm going to actually get into it a little bit. Is that okay?
It's your prerogative.
It is. So as mayor and a member of the Township Budget Committee, especially because of all the development happening, I have been curious about the policies and procedures surrounding a very specific bank account called the Developer Escrow Account. In January 2021, I formally asked, this went back to January, by the way. In January 2021, I formally asked the Township Manager for documentation regarding this account. 8 months later, after putting into context other information that I gathered, I believe there needs to be a full forensic audit of these accounts. Basically, for the general public listening, developers looking to do business in Belleville make an application to either our planning board or our zoning board. And they then place escrow monies in an account pursuant to state statute and township ordinances. Those funds, according to the state statute, should only be used for payment to outside professionals and consultants and for reimbursement to the township for municipal professionals. In essence, the outside professionals are professionals who have previously been qualified by the township, who then have an established business relationship with the township, such as our engineers, redevelopment counsel, and planners. They're all paid from these escrow accounts as they perform their professional services on behalf of the township. It should also be noted, when these outside professionals are qualified via the public RFP process, their fee structure is noted and approved. The state statute is very clear. Only outside professionals and consultants and reimbursement to the township for salary of municipal professionals are permitted to be paid out of these escrow accounts. Additionally, the state statute specifically states that applicants' escrow shall not be billed for any municipal clerical or administrative functions. Quotes directly from the state statute. Not satisfied with the results of my email question from January 2021, I was then forced to file an OPA request for the account documentation. I received that information several weeks ago, and today I believe I now have evidence that invoices for professional services have been typed up from within Town Hall and provided to the Finance Department. Based on those invoices, checks were cut with the manager's signature stamped on them, as he mentioned before. These actions circumvent all known financial checks and balances within the township. No authority exists for such a thing. Arbitrary dollar amounts were selected as a fee structure. It should be noted that one employee in question, Mr. DiLorenzo, is already being compensated $17,292 above his current municipal pay of $173,000 to perform various services and functions on behalf of the planning board and zoning boards. The money being extracted from this account is over and above that additional compensation. Mr. DiLorenzo is our construction code official, to which he receives a municipal salary of $173,000. Mr. DiLorenzo is also our zoning officer, and according to all of our local ordinances, he's not supposed to receive any additional compensation for those services. He does perform some duties as planning director, and he is already receiving an extra stipend of $17,292 per year for services he renders outside his normal work day. In fact, there is a resolution, which we mentioned before, authorizing the stipend of the extra $17,000 a year for these services. The resolution clearly states the mayor and the township council of the township of Belleville acknowledge that some of these duties are performed by Frank DiLorenzo outside his regular workday, and therefore he should be compensated by the same. Those duties he's already being compensated for, an extra $17,292 above the $193,000 a year, are outlined in that resolution. That paragraph actually reads, whereas the mayor, the township council wish to ensure that Frank DiLorenzo is compensated for performing his duties, such as receiving, processing, conducting initial intake for all development applications to the planning board, receiving, processing, conducting all initial intake of development applications under any redevelopment plan, provide responses to development applications for compliance, conduct a determination of completeness, and respond to applicants regarding any omissions or deficiencies, certify the completeness to the appropriate board, attend and participate in all regularly scheduled meetings of the planning board, attend and participate in all special meetings of the planning board, meet with developers to discuss applications pending in front of the planning board, attend and participate in developer meetings, and attend all subcommittee meetings pertaining to development projects. Yet, even though he's being compensated for planning board special meetings, planning board subcommittee meetings, even after-hour meetings, this documentation shows that he regularly created his own invoices for $750 for special planning board meetings, invoices for $200 for planning board subcommittee meetings. He created his own fee structure, typed up invoices, and received checks totaling thousands of dollars. I immediately contacted the township manager and I demanded an investigation. Clearly, the manager thought this was warranted and a rice notice for discussion was had. These are several invoices totaling thousands of dollars that have been typed up in town hall for arbitrary dollar amounts that are not part of any of our ordinances. $200 for a special meeting, a subcommittee meeting, $750 for subcommittee meetings, for special planning board meetings, everything to which he was already being compensated for an additional $17,000. Invoices typed up in this building, walked downstairs, checks cut, and money deposited. I don't think this is a miscommunication. I would ask the township manager to continue investigating this. I don't know why 3 weeks wasn't already enough, but I do ask him to continue investigating this and/or decide whether it needs to be done by outside agencies. Mr. Manager, anything else?
Just as a clarification, to council, just a quick question. Why didn't we do this with an ordinance rather than a resolution? Because to me, my understanding with certain resolutions is they're only good for like a year.
Not sure.
Frankly, we are in private, we're in public.
Oh,
and
okay.
if I tell
Never
you-
mind, never
If
mind.
I tell you that, I will violate my lawyer-client privilege. So
Okay.
I
Never
can't
mind.
do that.
Never mind.
I bet a lot of people are hearing that for the first time. This is something I've been looking at for a long time. It's clear, it's obvious. We have somebody being compensated to do X, Y, and Z. That compensation includes special meetings, subcommittee meetings, and after-hours meetings. We then have somebody typing up invoices in this building, walking downstairs, creating arbitrary dollar amounts for $750, or what if he wanted $2,000 for a subcommittee meeting? What if he wanted $1,250? He's literally created his own invoices, his own fee structure, typed them up on our computers probably up on the third floor, walked downstairs and got checks for services he's already being additionally compensated for. Total compensation, $189,000 before you add up all these invoices. I only have 6 months' worth of invoices, but by the way, $189,000 legitimately before you add up these invoices for arbitrary dollar amounts. Is it a miscommunication, Councilman, to make up your own fee
Hey,
structure?
Mike, I'm saying we need to clarify it, and we need to move forward. That's
Oh.
your prerogative. You want to sit here and give me this diatribe, continue on, but you know what? We haven't resolved squat.
Oh, I think we've resolved stuff. I think now the public knows, I think the manager knows, I think the administration knows that we have an employee in here typing up his own invoices, walking downstairs, bypassing every single checks and balances, not being paid in this payroll, but by the way, but just getting a check on the side and depositing it for services he's already being paid for. You, Councilman, as a steward of this township,
I
should
agree.
be
agree.
shocked by that. You should be
Mike,
outraged.
I agree.
And instead of trying to tell me
Mike,
it's a clerical error,
agree
you should be
That we
outraged.
should be shocked, but then
Okay.
you need to take responsibility too, because you are the head of this council. You are the man. So, you know what?
I'm the one that
And it's been going on
investigated
for
it.
years, Mike. It's been going on for years while you were the mayor. Come on,
no.
stop.
No, it's my fault.
Well,
All right,
hey, nothing's your
I'll
fault,
turn
Mike.
myself in with everybody
Mike,
else.
turn yourself in, because you should.
My fault. Got it.
Anyway, let's move forward, man.
So, Tommy, anything?
No, I'm just soaking this all in right now. It's the first time. Soaking it all in.
I did want to ask the manager, and thank you, Mayor, for providing the information. Obviously, there's a lot for us to process, and I understand that emotions run high when we have to make decisions that involve identifying what actually happened and who, this is, I don't think it's about blaming and finding fault, but understanding how can we be better, and how can we make our, we have a responsibility to the township to manage well, and to establish policies that can be followed, so things like this don't happen. So, to the manager, I understand that you're both still in this process of investigation. But as of now, we have a level of information, that what happens with this? Where do we go from here?
So from,
In other towns, there would be a criminal
Procedure.
investigation, in my opinion, but
so from procedural point, which we will discuss, because, and again, I just want to point out emphasize one thing that the mayor said. Mayor said, and he used the word checks and balance. I think what we're going to find out in this process, and possibly at the next conversation, there is no checks and balance, or there were no checks and balances.
which is highly susceptible to fraud.
Again, when we talk about the next topic, the planning board and the zoning board have to, and they have a fiduciary responsibility to approve every single invoice. They have never, to the best of my knowledge, and again, the review is nowhere near complete, but to the best of my knowledge, there has been no checks and balances at all, and that's a problem. So just for you to know and for taxpayers to know, when this was brought to my attention on that day, I have suspended the escrow account. So no one is being paid out of the escrow
Right.
account, whether you're an attorney, whether you're a court stenographer, whether you're an engineer, a planner, no one will be paid until we have checks and balances in place. It's unfortunate that we found out the way we found out that there are no checks and balances, but I think, again, the part B of this conversation, when we discuss procedures, or I should say procedures that are not being followed, we're going to find out that they have a fiduciary responsibility to approve every invoice, and they haven't approved any invoices.
Yeah,
So
and I agree with that, and that is what we will
need to
do
set up a
moving
process.
forward. My question is to what just happened, right? There is, in my calculations, just briefly, right, we're talking about 750, 200, and I don't know how many meetings a month we're talking about, but we have established that it goes back, at least back to 2 years. So my question is, from here, is there a responsibility for someone to pay this money back? Is there a
There
responsibility?
very well may be. I mean,
Okay.
at the conclusion of the review, and again, I just want to emphasize, the town manager and the assistant town manager have worked in conjunction and have reviewed every personnel matter that has been before us in the last 2 years, regardless if it was police, fire,
Yeah.
public works, or in this case, public employees. We have acted as one, used Mark's 20-plus years' experience, my 20-plus years' experience. So I feel that the review will come with a recommendation.
Absolutely, and I don't envy your job. I definitely know that this is a difficult process. However, I do think we have a big responsibility to the township to make sure that we do things right. And at the same time, that we review the policies so it doesn't happen
You need
again.
to set a procedure in place. No
Clearly
doubt about it.
preaching to the choir. My
We-
name is on a check that I've never seen, so obviously.
Absolutely.
That
I mean,
is
that's
great concern of
dangerous.
me.
Very dangerous.
Sure.
Of course.
Those checks wouldn't have been seen if invoices weren't typed up. And I know we keep saying that there are no checks and balances. There are checks and balance. I mean, I have the ordinance here, which we're going to get into in our discussion, but I have the ordinance here, which is our local ordinance, and it actually says that the zoning officer shall refer, and the zoning officer is supposed to be being that checks and balances that everybody says doesn't exist. It's actually the duty of the zoning officer to distribute the materials to different professionals and
Thought my one conversation and reading in one of them and Steve, certainly correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you and I discussed it, but doesn't the planning board and the zoning board, similar to the mayor and council, approve
Approve.
bill lists? Aren't they supposed to be voting on a bill list at each monthly
Yes,
meeting?
absolutely, absolutely.
According
Not
to
doing
our
it.
ordinance, yes,
Then they're
to
not
be
doing it.
presented to them by the zoning officer or,
Time out. So we do have a procedure in place. It's not being done. So my question is, if that zoning officer is supposed to be doing X, Y, and Z and not doing it, what are you going to do about that?
Okay, again, that would be part of the review and the conclusion and the recommendation.
Okay, understood. Because, I mean, it's easy to say the system is broken. This is not broken. There's somebody not doing their job. The job is supposed to be, it says it right here, the zoning officer does that stuff.
I think
The
there's-
problem is, it's the zoning officer that's actually submitting invoices, getting paid.
I think when we discuss policies and procedures, we're going to see that we do have to make some serious corrections.
Or you have to actually hold the employees accountable to do the tasks that the ordinance says they're supposed to be doing.
I don't want to make this more complicated and more confusing.
No, I don't mind, because I'll
But-
explain it.
But, okay, that's fine, but we did rice one employee for receiving pay to go to meetings, and they were getting some meetings, I think they were $150 a meetings. There's nothing in place that pays her $150. However, we do have a salary ordinance that says the planning board secretary gets $500 per meeting.
And I'm not going that route, but it does say it's for the planning board meetings.
It says $500 per meeting, the salary ordinance.
Right.
So a planning board meeting, or a special planning board meeting, or a subcommittee meeting, it doesn't say that. So maybe she shouldn't have been getting paid $150, maybe she should have been getting $500, maybe.
Got it.
Because again, and that's the part that I think the more we look into this, the more I think we have to correct that salary ordinance, because if it says $500 per meeting,
So let me ask you a question. You sit in on our redevelopment meetings, right? The zoning officer is also there, the construction code official, same person. No invoices for those meetings. Why is there no invoices for those meetings?
are you asking me that question?
Just, if you have any idea why. I mean, I'm sure you've talked to the employee about this in 3 weeks
Never asked the employee the question of why he didn't submit,
for our redevelopment, the meetings that we sit on, the redevelopment meetings.
again,
It's after hours.
you're asking a question I don't have the answer to.
Why not make up a number of $1,125 for those meetings? Isn't it odd that we're just making up arbitrary numbers and deciding which meetings we want to get paid for? You don't find that odd?
No, I have already presented everything that I've looked at to date so far.
Got it.
I clearly think that there has to be some corrections to the resolution or to the ordinance or the salary ordinance, whatever. I don't know.
And/or if you find wrongdoing, I'm assuming you're going to act on that wrongdoing.
Absolutely. And I think one of the questions that Councilwoman DePena asked was, would one of the considerations be to pay the money back? And certainly that would obviously be one of the considerations.
I mean, can I submit invoices and get money, and then when I get caught, pay it back?
But I was answering a question.
No, I'm asking you a new question.
Well, I'm
I'm
sorry,
on
what's your new
salary, I'm
question?
on salary for $7,000 a year. Why don't I just make up an invoice for our redevelopment meeting? We have a redevelopment meeting next Tuesday. We discuss developers, they have escrow accounts. Why don't I just type up an invoice and decide that I want to make $600 for redevelopment meetings, get paid, and then in a couple of years, if I get caught after thousands and thousands of dollars total up, I'll pay it back.
I don't.
Why don't I would love
Because
that.
I don't even know if the redevelopment.
I think you're
committee
sending a
is-
bad message to other
by
employees
ordinance.
by saying, well, if you get caught
I don't
doing
even know
wrong,
if the-
just you pay
I
it
don't
back.
know if the redevelopment committee is even recognized by our town ordinance. I don't know the answer to that.
Subcommittee's really not, by the way.
I don't know. So the point I'm trying to say is, there's clearly, again, review is not completed, but one of the considerations would be, to answer your question, there's a difference between a committee and a board. A board is created by ordinance, right?
Sure.
There's rules and policies and procedures in place for the planning board, zoning board, library board, all of that. For the redevelopment committee, to your credit, I think you developed it when you started bringing development into Belleville, so I think that's a good thing. But I don't think the redevelopment committee is recognized anywhere
Got it.
as any authority. I mean, I don't know if we don't vote, there's no votes and things like that. I think we discussed and stuff.
Very informal.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? I gave Councilman Graziano a chance. Ms. Burke? Naomi spoke?
We're good.
Vinnie?
We're good.
Steve? Okay, so with that being said, we're going to move on to discussions.